So I think, in my opinion, this year's budget, right, is not a revolutionary budget, but it is definitely a reasonably good budget. So what I intend to do in the next 5 to 10 minutes is to basically talk about uh, 4 or 5 things, and some of those which I feel uh, are are good in the budget. One risk element that I want to talk about, and one looking beyond the budget, what the government and the finance minister probably needs to focus on, which is not highlighted in the budget, definitely. But I think it is that thing, that notion is not there in the public discourse as much as it should be. So I think the first thing is, let me just focus on few good things. And a lot of people have talked about it, so I'll mostly be repeating. The first is that the budget has rightly chosen the path of fiscal consolidation while pushing up capital expenditure. There have been the second good thing that I found in the budget was that there are a couple of schemes that were either launched uh, or tweaked to encourage households to invest, to save more in financial instruments, which I think is a very good move to shore up savings in the country. And the third good thing that I felt was that there was an attempt to rationalize the inverted duty structure for some of the products, and there was a move to sort of bring down number of customs duties from 21 to 13, which I think is a good move to simplify the number of duties that we have. Now, coming to the risk part, right? I mean, the whole budget estimate projections are based on one fundamental assumption, which is what will India's GDP growth be in 23-24, and the budget assumes a number of 6.5% growth for the next year in real terms. Now that prima facie looks fine because we would India would grow at 7% this year, so 6.5% next year seems reasonable, taking into account the global uncertainties that we are facing. However, uh, and then looking people resort to uh, evidence from the IMF reports, etc., which also give similar numbers. I just have want to raise a word of caution there, right? That a lot of these agencies, not mentioning one particular, generally, their estimates have been found to be more optimistic for India's growth rate over the past 3 4 years between 2017 to 2020. So I think that is a big risk given the level of uncertainty we are seeing in the global economy. The one key missing thing that I feel needs far more attention, uh, even beyond the budget, is the need for India to become more productive, more competitive. Right? So let me just quickly about give a few more details on each of these points. So first, on the capex push, right? So this is unprecedented, right? I mean, in terms of increasing the capex, capital expenditure spend, proposed capital expenditure spend to be increased by roughly 33% from 7 lakh crores this year to 10 lakh crores is a very welcome move. And 50% of this overall capex expenditure is likely to go into roads and railways, which is again very good. This is consistent. This capex push is consistent with this government's philosophy of increasing the capex to GDP over time. So it is consistently increased. Capital expenditure to GDP has consistently increased over the last 8 10 years from around 1.7% to around 3.3% for the next year. I would just like to highlight one point here. So while focus on capital expenditure is a very welcome step, and it's a continuation of what the government has been doing to improve the quality of government spend. There is another dimension which doesn't get as much attention, right? So, which is that uh, the amount of expenditure and the outcomes that are coming out of it, right? Is that tracked? And do we see that there is scope for improving spend efficiency or not? Our work that we did last year indicates that if you look at one service, solid waste management, there is a significant scope to improve spend efficiency, because it is not necessary, we find in the report, that those cities that spend more necessarily also are cleaner. So, as the government keeps pushing on capex spending to improve quality of spending, my suggestion would be to also look at linking spending, government spend to outcome. So, because that is another avenue to improve the quality of. And the second good thing that I found in the budget was the scheme that we talked about, right? I mean, so the government has launched Mahila Samman Saving Certificate, where women or girls can deposit up to 2 lakh rupees for a tenor of 2 years at a fixed rate of 7.5%. And it has increased the maximum limit, uh, maximum deposit limit on two schemes: senior citizens savings scheme and monthly income account scheme. Now, these are I don't think the Honorable Finance Minister mentioned it explicitly, but I think these are welcome steps to increase household financial savings, because and that is critical, because the household savings make up for 70 to 75% of our overall capital formation or investment. And if we need to grow, if we want to grow faster, then we need more investment, and hence more household savings. Now, why this becomes even more critical is that since at least the 80s, 1980s, household savings as a percentage of GDP have been rising, right? So just to give a sense, in 1980s, the household savings to GDP was around 10 to 12%. Continuously, it kept increasing till 25% by 2010. But since then, it is going down. Okay. Of late, it has started moving up a bit, but from 2010 to 2020, large part of it was going down, and significantly, from 25% to around 18%. And we argue in our paper that this decline could be because of a structural reason. Part of this decline could be because of a structural reason, which is that the young people, which is people between the age group of 15 to 44 years, in the working age population, and working age population being 15 to 65 years, is going down. So the young, which and I think that the numbers that we have is that the share has gone down from 77% in 2001 to 72% by 2021. So the point is that household savings are critical. Of late, over time, they were increasing. Of late, they have started reducing, and we argue that part of this reduction could be structural, and hence this push or incentive for households to save more, we feel is a welcome step. I'll skip the thing on simplification of duty structure and inverted duty structure, because we have talked about it. I just want to spend a couple of more minutes just explaining the risk to GDP growth, and the associated risks to fiscal consolidation, right? So, so the budget assumes that India will grow at 6.5% real GDP next year, right? And the usual this thing is that, well, whether we look at last year's growth was 7, so with uncertainty slowing down of global growth, a reduction of 0.5% for India for next year seems reasonable. And then the second line of reasoning is that, well, that is how external agencies also look at India's growth. Now, we did some numbers. We looked at actual growth for India between, let's say, 2017 to 2020, and what some of these agencies predicted for India to grow for those years. So basically, 4 or 5 years before the pandemic, and we saw that actually, on an average, these agencies were um, estimating India to grow by 1.2% on an average at a faster pace than what actual growth rate turned out to be. So we just the point I'm making is that 6.5% is not a given, and if it is, we need to be careful. We need to work towards it, because if we are not able to achieve 6.5, then a lot of budget estimates on fiscal consolidation, etc., will be challenged. The last point is the point that the finance minister, to my mind, did not address or even express as much as it deserves. So, which is basically that if we want to achieve faster growth going forward, which we need to at our level of income, then the only way to grow faster in the long term is to improve productivity and competitiveness, right? Now, at least my understanding is that these two words, competitiveness and productivity, were used sparingly in the budget speech, right? I think three times each, these two words or thereabouts, and mostly actually in terms of agriculture, right? At least the productivity word was used mostly in terms of agriculture. Now, this improving productivity and competitiveness is the key for us to grow faster in the long run. And I think there was nothing specific that was addressed or proposed in the budget, and also the budget speech did not lay much attention to it. But I think if India has to grow faster, then we need to find ways to improve productivity and competitiveness. And our research shows that for any country to do that, it needs globally competitive large firms. So I think so. Budget, to my mind, is just a comma in the series of things that we need to do as a country to grow faster. But I would say the agenda is bigger, and we need to act on some of these things so that we are able to grow upwards of 7%, which is what is needed for us to alleviate poverty and give gainful employment to millions of our people. Thank you.